Hi, my name is Maggie Gadd, and today I will be teaching you about eating disorders. Let me just share my screen. All right, so eating disorders are known as the most misunderstood illness of all the mental illnesses, and I chose to talk about eating disorders because I have my own personal journey struggling through one. So I just really wanted to spread awareness about the real facts and experiences that come with having one so that you guys can look out for yourselves and your loved ones. So, an eating disorder is a serious mental illness characterized by eating, exercise, and body weight or shape becoming an unhealthy preoccupation of someone's life. The three specific kinds are anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, and binge eating disorder. And the warning signs of all three of these, there could be dramatic weight gain or loss. There's frequently discussing of weight, food, or shape, rapid decline or increase of food take. There could be excessive or compulsive exercise patterns or the abuse of dieting or laxatives. There's also a lot of eating in secret, maybe hiding food or disrupting meals. And then there are medical complications such as menstrual irregularity, hair loss, passing out, those kinds of things. And something that's really uncommonly known is that actually less than 6% of those with an eating disorder are medically diagnosed as underweight, which means that about 94% look completely normal, which is why it's really important to look out for these other warning signs. And here are some reasons why you should care. I think the most important one to me is the fact that for the last 5 years, we've actually had more ED deaths than opioid overdose deaths. And the reason why we're not talking about it is because the reason that they put down for cause of death is not eating disorder, but it's organ failure. And so people think that there's more organ failure than opioid, but there's actually more eating disorder than opioid. So now we're going to talk about the life of a dancer and ED symptomatology. There are a lot of expectations growing up in dance. I interviewed my friend Avery Beavers about her experience in dance. She's been dancing for 15 years. Growing up, she was complimented a lot on her figure because she was very small. And then when she hit puberty, she started to gain weight. And so she felt like there was something wrong with her. And so she subconsciously started to skip meals and then just not eat at all. And it became very conscious at one point where she would tell herself that she shouldn't eat things and she shouldn't have meals. To the point where she started to pass out in school. And so that expectation growing up in dance can be really dangerous. We're going to talk about fitness-related learning and fitness-related experiences. I found a study done by Kyle J. Penniman and Sarah J. Egan where they researched the effects of TRL and TRE in dance on ED symptomatology, and they found that higher levels of TRL and TRE are related to higher levels of perfectionism and therefore eating disorder symptoms. So high levels of perfectionism, like I just said, are directly related to eating disorder symptoms in dancers. But I'd like to note that perfectionism definitely has the opportunity to manifest itself in dancers outside of dance class. So there are girls that start dance with high levels of perfectionism, and these girls are naturally at a higher risk for developing ED symptoms in dance class, but there still is that direct correlation between higher levels of TRL and TRE and higher levels of perfectionism. So now I like to talk about eating disorders in relationships. I interviewed my boyfriend of 2 years, Ethan Lynn, to look into his perspective of how he handled me and my struggles, and he really emphasized the importance of support, routine, and encouragement. For support, he would make me meals and he would eat with me, so he was kind of setting that example of how important nutrition is in my life. And then in the morning for routine, he would wake me up, and we'd go run every morning, and then we'd make breakfast right after that. So that was a very good, solid routine that we had every week. And then encouragement is always really important for your significant other and your loved ones. Just make sure that they really understand that there's more to their worth than just their physical attributes, that they are perfect just the way that they are inside and out. I found an article written by the Emily Project, which is a treatment program for those who are struggling, and they discussed how eating disorders really affect communication, emotional health, and sexual intimacy in relationships. So for communication, eating disorders are naturally just really secretive, and so victims don't really want to talk about it, but when they do, there's kind of this voice that comes along with eating disorder that distorts everything that another person says into making the victim feel like they're talking about their weight and their shape and what they're eating. And then with emotional health, there's a lot of hopelessness and helplessness, which really creates a wedge and a lot of isolation in the relationship. And then with sexual intimacy, there's a lot of shame, body dissatisfaction, and low self-confidence that really complicates that intimacy. And also just the lack of food creates a lot of decrease in hormonal functioning. So here's how you can support your partner, your loved one. You can't fix, heal, or cure what they're going through, but you can absolutely play a crucial supportive role in their lives by encouraging them to seek professional help or learning about eating disorders and teaching them about what they're going through. Try not to make comments about what they are and are not eating, but instead set an example and eat with them. Complement their non-physical attributes. I think that's really important. And then just remember to look after yourself with the awareness that their struggles and needs can absolutely be affecting you as well. So now we're going to talk about facts, neuroscience, and realities. And I'd like to mention the allocentric lock hypothesis, which is basically that individuals who suffer with eating disorder have this perception of what the perfect body is, and that's their goal, but they're never going to be able to reach it because it doesn't exist. And there are two possible causes of this, which are endogenous and exogenous. Endogenous is just a functional vulnerability of the brain and the areas involved in those encoding areas directly related to body image distortion. And exogenous is just an excessive level of stress, which causes a lot of hippocampal damage because of the excessive activity exerted by the amygdala. And the consequences of this allocentric lock is that there's just a lot of impossibility of meeting those societal standards. And so those girls and boys never really reach the point that they want to get to. And so they're just constantly trying to reach that point. So I interviewed an eating disorder therapist. Her name is Cami Brimhall. She's a therapist at Center for Change, which is an eating disorder clinic for young girls. And she basically calls eating disorders a lot of strengths gone wrong, because a lot of these girls have perfectionism, achievement-oriented, and good attributes that just became obsessive. So she tells us about the biology and neurobiology of eating disorders. She explains how eating disorders are an addiction. The cycle is very addictive, and it's harder than most addictions because food is accessible all the time. And they just become a safety net for these people, and they're very compulsive and numbing, just like any other addiction. And she also mentions that the myelin sheaths on our neurons are completely made from fat. So when our body is malnourished, it's taking that fat from the myelin sheaths to store energy for our bodies, because we're missing a lot of those nutrients. And when those myelin sheaths are taken from the neurons, our signals are going everywhere because those myelin sheaths aren't there to guide and insulate the signals. So it's really hard for those who struggle with an eating disorder to feel anything, and they can't really think or retrieve information effectively. So I'd like to talk about my experience personally. I struggle, most of my allocentric lock roots from media and body dysmorphia, and I have since deleted all social media. So I decided to research how social media affects body dysmorphia, body image, and self-esteem, and eating disorder symptomatology. And so I found this study conducted by Sarah Santarasa and Sarah J. Woodruff, and they conducted an online survey asking young adults about their frequency of social media usage and how it relates to their body image. And they found that because social media uses photographs to communicate, it's very effective. It's very affecting of their self-esteem and their body image, because they're constantly comparing themselves to other girls and constantly either lifting them up or dragging them down just because of the way that they look. So my recovery, I am technically still in recovery, and I will continue to be in recovery for most of my life. The average recovery time is about 22 years because food is always accessible, and there's always those triggers every single day. And I definitely still question whether I should eat. I definitely still wish I didn't have to eat. I obsess over my size, but I am working towards a goal, and I have a routine, and I have my plans, and I think I try to eat the same time every day. I try to do homework and be productive so I have something to be proud of. And the most important thing in my recovery that I would like to discuss is exercise. It's very important to note that exercise can be used excessively, but when it's used right, it is extremely effective in eating disorder recovery. I found a study conducted by Hester Hawkins Boyer and Megan Warren about women, exercise, and eating disorder recovery. They found that weightlifting, so they used the practice of weightlifting to analyze how exercise helps women in ED recovery. And they found that weightlifting not only helped the women see real results in their body size, but it also helped them redirect the appetite for transformation toward their functional ability and strength and not just the way that they look. They also, weightlifting also gave them a really healthy outlet for anger and an opportunity to feel power and that sense of control that they were lacking when they started showing ED symptoms. So I'd just like to remind you all that I think the most important thing to remember is to just be happy and healthy. Always remember that your goal is not to look a certain way, but it's to function happily and function healthily, whichever way that means for you. And here's my bibliography. Thank you.